So what we're going to talk about tonight is the Great Backyard Bird Count, which is just a really cool way to enjoy birds, participate in science, and just like feel a sense of community with people. So what I'm going to talk about, this presentation is going to be really short, so I apologize if it seems like I'm talking really fast. But we're going to go over like what and when is the Great Backyard Bird Count, why you should participate, how to record data and report it using eBird. And then I'm going to very, very quickly go over some common birds that you might see on your bird count here in Missouri during the winter time. So let's get started. So, sorry. So first off, what is the Great Backyard Bird Count? So it was launched in 1998 by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology and National Audubon Society. And in 2019, Birds Canada joined in to provide extra expanded capacity into Canada, which is super cool. It was the first online community science project to collect data on wild birds. And now it's a global project with people of all ages spending their weekend counting, learning about, and celebrating birds. So it's pretty awesome. So the project goal is that for 4 days in February, which for this year, for 2021, is going to be the 12th through the 15th, the world comes together for the love of birds. So the goal is to spend time in your favorite birding places, watching and counting as many birds as you can find, and then reporting your findings to participate in community science. So what is the data used for? Like what do the science, how are you participating in community science? So bird populations are constantly changing. No single scientist or team of scientists could hope to keep track of all the complicated patterns of movement of species around the world. The information from the Great Backyard Bird Count participants combined with other surveys, such as like the Christmas bird count in the winter or the breeding bird survey in the summer, help scientists learn how birds are affected by environmental changes over time. So the information you send in for the Great Backyard Bird Count can provide the first sign that an individual species may be increasing or declining from year to year. And data gathered over many years helps highlight how a species range may be expanding or shrinking. A big change noted consistently over a period of years is an indication that something is happening in the environment that is affecting the birds and that should receive attention. So that is important, really important information that we're providing. Also, the Great Backyard Bird Count information allows us to look at what kinds of birds inhabit different areas, such as cities and suburbs compared to more natural habitats. So we can actually learn a lot just by counting the birds in our backyard. And so another like frequently asked question or something you might be curious about, well, then why is the count in February in particular? Why not have it during like migration season or something like that? Well, originally, the Great Backyard Bird Count was held in the US and Canada each February to create a snapshot of the distribution of birds just before spring migrations ramped up in March. So scientists at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology and National Audubon Society, Birds Canada, and elsewhere can combine this information with data from surveys conducted at different times of year, like I said, the Christmas bird count in winter and the breeding bird survey in summer. And in 2013, the count went global, creating snapshots of birds wherever they are in February, regardless of seasons across hemispheres. So originally it was in February to kind of create that snapshot of where the birds were just before they kind of ramped up for spring migration. But now, since it's global, it's just kind of a really cool snapshot of where birds are around the globe at this time of year, which I think is super cool. So why participate? Well, essentially you can become a part of a global science project, which I think is just awesome. And the data helps us all learn about and protect birds in our own backyards and everywhere. So it's pretty cool. Okay, so now I'm going to go over just like a brief instructions for how the count is done. And you can also find this information written out on the website birdcount.org. And you can also print out a PDF of instructions if you want to have that with you on the day. So essentially what you do is you go out and count birds anywhere you like. for at least 15 minutes or for as long as you wish. And you'll just want to keep track of the kinds of birds you see and how long you watched. And then you're going to make your best estimate of how many birds you saw of each species. So for example, you might be like, oh, I saw 5 northern cardinals and 3 crows, and maybe 6 blue jays. Huge flocks of birds can be a challenge, but your best guess is still valuable information for them. And then what you're going to do is you're going to enter your lists online. And we'll talk about the different ways that you can enter these. So essentially, you count birds for at least 15 minutes, make your best estimate of how many birds you saw of each species, and then you enter your list online. So it's relatively simple. So there are 3 ways to enter this data or record it. One way is through the Merlin Bird ID app, which first, and I'll talk a little bit more about that app in a second, but essentially it's connected to eBird. So if you go through that, you can submit directly from there, or you can use eBird mobile app and enter your data on there. Or if you don't have a smartphone, or you don't have any like storage space left on your smartphone, you can do it from the eBird webpage. So this is desktops and laptops. So you can start entering bird lists at midnight local time on the first day of the count anywhere in the world. And that data entry period remains open until about March 1st, but the information you enter should only be from the 4 days of the Great Backyard Bird Count, so the 12th through the 15th. I'll also mention that if you already have a Cornell Lab account for eBird, Merlin Bird ID, Project Feeder Watch, Nest Watch, etc., you can simply use that login information to participate in the Great Backyard Bird Count. But if you don't have one of those accounts or you never participated in the Great Backyard Bird Count before or since 2013, you'll need to set up an account. And when you download the Merlin Bird ID app or eBird mobile app, or going through ebird.org, they'll usually walk you through the process of how to set up an account. You're just going to be asked to provide your name and your email and choosing a personal username and password for that account. And then any additional profile information is optional. So, and last thing that I'm going to mention for counting instructions is when to put in a new checklist. So you'll need to put in a new checklist for each new day. So say you went out and counted on the 12th, and then you also went out and counted on the 14th. Those would be different lists of birds that you saw. Also for each different location. So say on the 12th, you eBirded in your backyard in the morning, and then you went out to a local park. Those would each have to be 2 different checklists as well, because you're doing it at different locations. And then also a new checklist if you're in the same location, same day, if you counted at a different time of day, because that's going to also be different statistically. So if you eBirded at 8 a.m. and then you eBirded again at 5 p.m., those are going to be different checklists because that big gap is going to kind of be, if you did an eBird checklist the whole day, that's not really an accurate account of how much effort you put in. So you really want to be as specific as possible. So I hope that clarifies things a little bit. But like I said, you can find these instructions at birdcount.org as well, and we'll put that link along with the recording of this webinar. So I want to quickly go over some resources to identify birds. And there are a lot out there, and what I'm going to share with you are 3 that are free and easy to use. So like I mentioned before, the Merlin Bird ID app. So this is an app that you can download onto a smartphone, and you can get help with a bird ID anywhere in the world. And I like this one for beginners because it kind of also teaches you how to go about identifying a bird. So it starts with 5 simple questions to ID a bird, and then you can kind of choose which one it is you think you saw based on those descriptors. It also has the option to ID from a photo. So if you're able to take a photograph of the bird, you can submit it onto Merlin, and it can give you a best guess of what that bird might be. And then like I said, it's connected to eBird, so you can directly submit your checklist from there. So that's a really great resource. I like using it, particularly for the photo ID option. So that's one option. Another option is the Audubon Bird Guide app. So this is more of a mobile app for in-depth identification and biology information for birds in the US and Canada. It's also free and easy to use for most experience levels. Contains over 800 species of North American birds, lots of photos, audio clips, which can be a huge bonus, and range maps and things like that. And so, yeah, and there's a lot of other neat features with the Audubon Bird Guide app as well. So that's definitely worth checking out. Also, again, if you don't have a smartphone, there's still options for you. Allaboutbirds.org is a great website. I get a lot of awesome information from there. So that's for like in-depth identification and if you want more in-depth biology about the birds. And you can search for specific species and compare with similar species and learn about life history and distribution and sound identification. And there's also a lot of really pretty images on there as well. So that's another way, even if you don't use it as your bird ID resource, I highly recommend you check that out at some point. So those are just some three free resources that you can find online, but also any field guide is great to use. And we have some tips for that too, but anyone will be great that you have, and yeah, it'll just be a lot of fun. Okay, I'm going to check the Q&A real quick. 15 minutes. Oh, okay. So yeah, so 15 minutes minimum, and all day is too long. Yeah, how can we observe for one checklist? 30 minutes, an hour, 4 hours. You can observe for as long as you want. You just want to make sure that your checklist is accurate to how long you observed. So it's just kind of at least 15 minutes watching birds, but if you only want to do it for an hour, that's great. If you want to do it for 4 hours, that's also great. Unless you move locations. But I see what you're saying with like the different time of day. I think it's just like if you're birding in the morning and you take a big chunk of time off, meaning like probably, I would say even like at least 30 minutes, you're going to want to start a new checklist then again. But that's a great question. I hope I hope I answered it. So now I'm going to quickly go over some common Missouri backyard birds that we might find in the winter. And I'm going to go through them really quickly with not a whole lot of detail, but it should give you an idea of what you might be able to see. So first, these are kind of, I think, some of the most common and easy recognizable ones. So you've got your blue jay, bright blue with that crest, a northern cardinal, male and female. These are going to be super common, as well as the tufted titmouse, which I kind of think of as like a mini blue jay with a little bit less patterning. But they're more grayish and less bluish in color. So those are 3 that you might see. Also, we've got your black cap chickadee or Carolina chickadee, depending on where you are in the state. And so if you're in northern Missouri, you're going to have your black cap chickadee. If you're in southern Missouri, it's likely going to be a Carolina chickadee. But if you're in that middle area, you'll also have the option to put black cap / Carolina if you're not sure. Also, nuthatches, one of my favorite backyard birds, are something you might see. Red-breasted nuthatch, a little bit more or less common, only here in the winter time, but we have been seeing them quite a bit this winter, so that's exciting. But white-breasted nuthatches are here all year round, and they're quite common. So those are some birds as well. Also, lots of finches in the winter time. They can be kind of difficult to distinguish. So American goldfinches, being that kind of yellow wash with those black and white wings and tail feathers. And then purple finch and house finch. And these are very difficult to tell the difference between, and you can always put purple / house finch into eBird if you're not sure which one you're looking at. Particularly the females can look very similar. So I don't have the purple finch female on here, but she looks a lot like the house finch, but has kind of a white line above her eye, a supercilium mark. And then purple finches, they got a little bit of different shape. They're a little bit less streaky on the belly, as you can see, and overall much more red and much more purpley, I guess you could say. So those are tricky. So definitely look out or maybe do some studying beforehand with any field guide that you use to try to distinguish between those two. Woodpeckers, almost guaranteed to find woodpeckers out there. Red-bellied woodpecker is a really common backyard one. Downy as well. Hairy, a little bit less so, but definitely might see it. And same with northern flicker. Lots of different options there. The difference between, I like these pictures of downies and hairies next to each other because you can see the difference in size, but that's really hard to tell when you're looking at them. So you really want to look at the length of the beak compared to the head, with the hairy having a much longer beak compared to its head than the downy woodpecker. And there are some other subtle hints as well. So that's another one to check out maybe ahead of time on your field guide so that you can put specifically, but you can also do the slash with those guys on eBird as well. So a lot of great birds out there that you might find. And that was my whole presentation. I promised a short one and I think I succeeded. Thanks everyone for listening. And I hope you can participate in this awesome event on February 12th through 15th to discover the birds in your neighborhood. You can also learn more about the Missouri Young Birders Club by visiting our website, moyoungbirders.org, or following us on Instagram and Facebook. And I'll put that website link in the chat as well. But thank you all for listening. I do have some time for questions as well. So feel free to put any, I will check out in case I miss any, but thank you all for coming. If you can't stick around. Oh, we do have some questions. Awesome. Okay, so, all right, so I see, okay, so 3 bluebirds. So I see 3 bluebirds, they fly away. 5 minutes later, I see 4 bluebirds. I report 7 or 4 because that's the most I saw at one time. So yeah, that's definitely the tricky part of recording birds. And so I'd say if you're standing in one place, and if you have, like, if you can pay attention to like where the birds flew and where they came back in, but if you're standing in one place, I would probably put 4 bluebirds. But if you're moving around and you're covering quite a distance in between those groups, I would probably say 7. And if you can pay attention to like where they flew away and did they come back from the same area, but even then that's tricky. So if you're unsure, and again, that's why they say best estimate is so helpful. But if you're sitting in one place, yeah, I would probably say 4 bluebirds. But yeah, that's definitely tricky and like is kind of up to the discretion. And I talk about that all the time. But yeah, I hope that answers your question a little bit. But yeah, if you're moving around, don't be, you know, I'm usually, if I'm moving quite a distance, I'm usually less cautious unless I'm doubling back on the same area, then I'm only reporting new species. But if you're sitting in the same place, looking at feeders particularly, I only report what I see at one time because yeah, it's likely the same birds coming back to the same area. But there are a lot of bluebirds out there in big groups right now. Oh, thanks everybody on the compliments. Okay. So if I participate in Project Feeder Watch, would I need to spend additional time for Great Backyard Bird Count? I don't think so, because my understanding is any eBird checklist submitted on those days counts as a Great Backyard Bird Count checklist. So if and I'm not as familiar with Feeder Watch, if those are separate forms, but I think they'll kind of overlap. But either way, you're participating in important citizen science. So either way, you're doing a great job. And yeah, don't stretch yourself too thin. Do we need to designate male, female, or just the species? That's a great question. So you do not need to designate male or female, but that's just kind of fun to know sometimes. And what that can be helpful too is if you're sitting in one spot and you're like, oh, I see a female downy woodpecker or 2 females, and then a male flies in, you're like, oh, well, then I know I have 3 woodpeckers. So I don't know if that was clear, but so you do not have to designate that on your checklist. Okay, so which app for Merlin Bird ID? Picture Bird? So it's the one by Cornell Lab is the one that I was mentioning and describing. I'm not sure about those other ones. I haven't used them before, but the Merlin Bird ID by Cornell Lab is the one I was describing. And hi, Lucy, I miss you too. And we'll have a meeting soon. All right, awesome. Yeah, so that actually, Lucy, thank you for reminding me. I have another announcement, which I will take off the recording, is that I'm setting dates for all of our MyBC meetings, and hopefully we'll get to do in person sometime relatively soon. But I'm setting the dates for those, and I'm going to be putting them up on our website and the Facebook page. And I believe I've added February's through March on there already, or maybe April. So you can look for that. In February, we're going to have Merbo field project leader Eric come in and talk to us about his job, and we can ask him about all of the weird stuff that happens on field projects. So that shall be fun. All right, I think I got all the questions. So Tammy, do you have any closing statements?
No, I think you've covered it all. Can you give us the website for the Missouri Young Birders Club?
Oh, thank you for reminding me. That I just put in the website. It's not as a link, but if you put that in your web browser, it should take you right there. And I'm sure if you Googled Missouri Young Birders Club, it should bring you to the right webpage as well.
Okay.
But yeah, we're really welcoming new members. And yeah, and I will also put out there, I'm going to put my email in here too, so that if you have any other questions that you can't find the answers to, feel free to email me. Oh, wait, sorry. That's it. It's this. A wrong order. I'm going to delete that. Okay. So thank you all for listening. I don't think we have any more questions. I greatly appreciate all of you coming tonight and asking questions of things I didn't think about. And like I said, this recording will be available on the website for reference. But a lot of the information, birdcount.org, I think does a pretty thorough job of talking about the Great Backyard Bird Count. But like I said, feel free to email with any questions. And I hope to see all of you again soon. And Tammy, thanks for co-hosting with me, even though I talked way too much.
You did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Bye, everybody. Have a great night.